Space Marine 2 events are not as lore inaccurate as they may seem at first glance. Are not as lore inaccurate. Interesting. I used to think the events in the game are very overblown, but the more I think about it, the more they actually seem to be in line with the lore, with exceptions of course. The greater demon fight is way too much, but I can think of this as the big culprit as why the game feels like too much for people who read the books. Anything can happen in the tabletop, so it's probably not as crazy there. Ignoring the greater demon fight, everything else in the campaign is probably fine for a named character, and kind of underwhelming, even for a group of 3 named characters. I think, yeah, are they referring to the campaign? I believe so. I mean, ultimately, we pretty much fight the same things. I am talking about the campaign here. Oh, okay. Immediately answers my question. Wow. Operations is a different beast. Okay. So they're making the argument that the lore of the campaign is pretty accurate. But Operations is a different beast. That's unfortunate. I feel like it's kind of weird with Operations because, you know, you have to consider even Operations, they are named Space Marines and you can take off their helmet. Yeah, Combat Squad Talassa. I think that's how you pronounce it. The Operations Squad, I'm pretty sure. I think they are actually supposed to be, you know, pretty impactful as far as Space Marines go. Like they definitely should feel on another level. I'm just saying, Combat Squad Talassa is they're definitely above average Space Marines at least. You know what I mean? So you can't really judge them based on, you know, the feats of an average Space Marine. They're definitely heightened, 100%. But yeah, ultimately, I do think campaign it serves the campaign better to be lore accurate, 100%. Hellbrutes, those are basically dollar store dreadnoughts. They lack the rationality, and whatever experience they may have goes out the window with the lack of rationality. Half the time, they just want to die. Terminators, yeah, those are a bit too much even for named characters, but these are Thousand Sun Terminators. They're not as strong as they used to be, and they probably are inferior to the average Terminator. Ooh, this is interesting. This is the first time I've heard this. Chaos or not, as they need to follow commands from their sorcerer, they are much more independent than a regular rubric, but still follows the same rules, so one Terminator at the time should be fine for a group of named Marines. Sorcerers can be argued that they are weak due to the Tyranid presence in the area. Oh, well, that's interesting. Yeah, it probably has something to do with, like, you know, territorial warp situations, I guess. This is kind of an interesting detail. I think this post is really good as far as their attention to detail to the lore. So yeah, this is a good post. As for Tyranids, Neurothrop fight is probably pushing to the limits. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Okay, wait, hold on. So I guess what they're getting at here is the Neurothrop, like lore-wise, is stronger than Chaos Terminators, and they're also saying that sorcerers are weaker because of Tyranid presence. This is interesting. This is the first I've seen somebody take this much time to kind of explain things as far as like overall enemy balance lore, I guess. It can be argued that the Neurothrop was distracted and maybe it was taken by surprise. I guess he's referring to the campaign. And that is kind of what was happening lore-wise. Like, that Neurothrop was a menace. Like, it was causing chaos on that planet. But it's funny. It's like they're just little floaty things if you compare them to, like, some of the, like, the Lord of Change or whatever. Like, Neurothrops are relatively small. Carnifex is perfectly doable for a group of 3 named Marines. Dante soloed one during the devastation of Baal, while the Sanguinary Guard made room for him to fight the monster. The rest of the Tyranids fight seem to be fine. If anything, I think there should be more Tyranids there than what we see. Oh, okay. They go into operations afterwards. So this is interesting. The only real like lore note I have, and I know it doesn't go that far, but yeah, Combat Squad Talassa definitely feels like above average Space Marines at the very least. So as they go into operations here, I just want to point out that, you know, as far as a new enjoyer of Warhammer, I can kind of, you know, suspend my belief for Combat Squad Talassa, because I think they're kind of building up. Potentially we can see them in the next game, but that would be kind of interesting, right? But okay, let's go into what this person has to say about operations. I think this is going to be a pretty good breakdown. As for operations, I'm going to say it. All the Chaos Ops are BS. They are not very lore accurate. There's no way a squad of 3 goes through a greater, that was a Lord of Change, demon host, without a librarian. Goes through, oh, okay. they're suggesting a librarian for operations to make it a little bit more lore accurate. That's kind of interesting. Librarians are very powerful. But see, here's the thing. See, I was correct to point this out. No way a squad of 3. But it's not a normal squad of 3. You know what I mean? So let's see if they go into that. Fall of Atreus and Reliquary have more variables, and the only set of enemies are the Helldrake at the end, and where they receive aid from the relics, and Atreus has nothing special on it. So I will give them a pass, but they are still a bit too much when looking at the big picture, in my opinion. Well, okay, let's continue. But still, I would just like some people to approach this in the sense where it's like, you know, it's not just a regular squad of 3 Space Marines. You know what I mean? Obelisk is straight up BS in my eyes. That was an exalted sorcerer. This is the equivalent of a named Space Marine, and they took it down like it was a random dude. Okay, but sheesh. Now they mentioned the name Space Marine, right? I mean, maybe they're considering that with their squad of 3, maybe, but still, I don't know. I just don't think it's a normal squad of 3 regardless, and I do think the potential of, you know, Combat Squad Talassa is a little bit more than just a normal squad of Space Marines. This is the first I've heard somebody refer to the sorcerer at the end of Obelisk as an exalted sorcerer, though. Normally, they refer to him as a lesser sorcerer. All sorcerers in this game are referred to lesser sorcerers, as far as I know, outside of the campaign. So, interesting. Let me know in the comments if you have anything to add or if you're able to clarify some of this stuff, because obviously this is going to be probably the best lore post I've seen, but I'm going to definitely not understand a lot of it. So. Ultimately in the game, I understand balance and stuff, and I did pick up a fair amount as far as like what enemies should actually be the most threatening in the game. And it's under my understanding that sorcerers in this game are lesser sorcerers for a reason. But okay, let's continue. Tyranids operations are fine, especially when looking at stats. The stats themselves look very doable under 1,000 Tyranids, but the problem is how they kill those Tyranids. What? It's perfectly believable that a squad of 3 takes out 1,000 Tyranids, but it's a bit iffy that they take on 1,000 Tyranids to the face rather than it being done through tactics and precision strikes. Sheesh. We are the tactics. we are the tactics. We're playing the strategies. Holy cow. I feel like this is a little bit, I feel like this is, kind of missing the point, I think. Precision strikes. Yes, some outside sources definitely help us. I mean, even with the Trigon Prime at the end, there's definitely some firepower coming from our ship. So even though we take it down, we kind of weaken it, I guess. And then, yes, we do have some, helpful artillery fire at the end of that boss fight. So, I mean, it's in the scene, it's in the, the after the operation scene, but, I mean, we still do get precision strikes. Termination is probably the best example here. It seems believable that a squad of 3 lined up the cannons and nuked the Hierophant. Heck, this is even the kind of story that you would see in a book. Ooh, okay. You know what? I will say Termination does feel like a good operation. Sometimes it can get a little sweaty, but it is pretty cool to see somebody appreciate the lore accuracy of Termination and actually point out that, yeah, this is pretty book-like, and that's kind of cool to read. Ultimately, I do appreciate this post. I just, I have certain things I push back on. I just want to expect the squad to survive after because the hive mind would overrun them. Interesting. Yeah, I can't really push back on that too much. I don't know. Fine. This is what's gonna happen in horde mode. Let the hive mind try to overrun us, and then, when Decimus solos for whatever reason, that's solidified canon. Decapitation. If the hive tyrant didn't have a large pillar stuck in it or was missing a hand, I'd say it's too much. Using Dante here as an example again, he took down a winged hive tyrant in a 1v1 aerial fight. I believe this was during one of his battles before the Devastation of Baal. He also soloed a very confused Swarm Lord near the end of the Devastation of Baal. The Cicatrix Maltictum. I'm sorry, guys. Holy cow. Crash the hive mind. Devastation of Baal. Sheesh. I should have skipped that one, right? I will cut some slack to the winged hive tyrant because I don't think they are meant to be fighting in air, wings, or not. I am curious to know what people who have read more books about chaos have to say. My Thousand Suns experience is limited to the Mephiston trilogy and a few short stories with barely any combat. I'm curious to what people who have read more books about chaos have to say. I mean, honestly, I think they're coming to this conversation with a good point. ultimately. I think they definitely know a lot about the lore. Obviously, they had some great details to point out. I just dislike the framing of the operation squad being just a squad of 3. It's like essentially a squad of 3 Space Marines who are just a little bit under, Titus, I'm pretty sure. They're just not, Titus is interesting, right? That's why I like Titus, because nobody really considers him, like, the strongest character in, like, the series, but he consistently punches up in difficulty, you know what I mean? He always punches into stronger enemies, and, like, he just goes after the strongest, and he just kind of proves himself over time. So I think we're kind of in the same situation with the operations here, and Combat Squad Talassa. I think we're in a similar situation where we kind of have to see them, tackle more of these missions and more of these situations to really understand what they actually contribute to the lore overall with how efficient they are at going through these operations. Because I can imagine if you were to look at exactly what they mentioned with termination here, I mean, you still have to believe that even if it's a bit lore accurate, that they go through this operation flawlessly. Even though, when we go through the operation, sometimes we get a mortal wound here and there, you know what I mean? So, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of like the conversation with Resident Evil, where essentially, what I believe the creator said, the lore accurate version of the game, the characters in that game don't get bit at all. They don't get touched. So, you're playing the game, and you are getting bit, and you do have your green herbs to heal you, but in lore accuracy, they're dodging everything. So I don't know. I think we're kind of in a similar situation here where we're not fully convinced by the power of Combat Squad Talassa ultimately because, we're playing through these situations and some of them seem pretty unbeatable because we're kind of just introduced to these guys. And then you see a lot of people, not so much of this post specifically, but I do think the way they, the way they have like the squad of 3, the way they, detail that, it just feels a little bit underpowered and underwhelming to what I think the devs are intending the power of Combat Squad Talassa. It feels, they work hand in hand with Titus. It feels like they are going through with perfect strategies and tactics and all of that. It just feels like, I don't know, maybe we just need to see them do more operations. Maybe we can understand their impact a little bit more. But I think some people are underselling Combat Squad Talassa when they said a squad of 3, because you can take off your helmet and you do have a name. So that's pretty interesting. Okay, let's go into the comments. Let's see what they say about this breakdown. I think it's pretty interesting. I know the conversation of lore accuracy on operations have been said before, but I think the way this person went about it with actually using examples from the book and everything, this is likely the best breakdown I have seen for operation lore. And I honestly do appreciate people doing this because I'm learning a lot. And honestly, the only thing I want to push back on is just the framing of a squad of 3. It's definitely, closer to a squad of 3 Space Marines without helmets and names. Neurothropes have been known to single-handedly body entire planets. 3 Space Marines would have their heads turned into mush. You could literally pull all but one limb off a hive tyrant and it would flay 3 Marines alive with its psychic capabilities before they made it through the door. But the tabletop lore, 3 Space Marines would struggle with 3 or 4 Tyranid warriors, and a lictor will cut through a squad. By book lore, maybe in a squad of 10, some of the ops could come off, but 3 Space Marines, unless it's Kalgar, Dante, and reconstituted Bjorn, the fell-handed, it's a real stretch. The thing is, though, it makes for a great game. See, again, I agree with this comment. This is a pretty good comment. But again, they're doing the same thing. 3 Space Marines would flay 3 Marines. Tabletop lore, 3 Space Marines. It's not, and then they mention Kalgar and how effective they would be in combat. And ultimately they're right? But still, the framing, it's not just regular 3 Space Marines. I just think Combat Squad Talassa is a lot stronger than we think lore-wise. You know what I mean? But it is pretty cool what they say about the Neurothropes here have been known to single-handedly body entire planets, and you can kind of understand when you're fighting them how difficult you could imagine how difficult it would be to take one down, like for just a regular soldier or whatever, you know what I mean? At least the average army in Warhammer. I think Warhammer's pretty big, you know, but seeing a Neurothrop kind of just take down a planet is definitely impressive. And even when you fight them in the game, you kind of appreciate their kit a little bit. But yeah, once you know how to fight around them, it does feel very satisfying to get like a nice ground slam on them when they're going for the AoE attacks. A note in the operation's favor is that they aren't being fought on the front line typically. They are meant to be quick surgical strikes on a high value target while the main force of the enemy is distracted somewhere else. The closest the three come to from the front lines is probably Obelisk, where we push through the Thousand Suns lines to turn the thing. To turn the thing. Yeah, we did turn that thing, huh? Yeah, I mean, this is a fair point also. A note in the operation's favor is that they're being fought on the... they're not on the front line. I mean, that's very, very good point. 100%. I mean, that is true, too. People really do kind of, like, frame it like, oh, it's just 3 Space Marines just soloing this entire army, and that's really not the case. That's definitely not the context. They are meant to be quick surgical strikes on a high-value target. Yeah, I mean, dude, this person's correct. It is pretty strategical in the context of the operations and the framing. The closest the 3 come to the front lines is probably Obelisk. Yeah, I mean, didn't the original poster say they didn't like Obelisk lore accuracy also? But they, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, they kind of, you know, leveled up the Sorcerer at the end a bit. But maybe, you know, maybe the Sorcerer was exalted, but sheesh. Yeah, I don't know. They still had a theory, right? If Tyranids were in the area, like the power to the warp for sorcerers are just a little bit weaker. Maybe that's the case, but Obelisk is pretty wild. I will admit, Obelisk is probably the biggest stretch as far as I'm convinced reading these comments, you know. But yeah, regardless, let me know in the comments how you guys feel about the lore accuracy of operations. To me, it definitely feels like operations are a little bit more lore accurate than we thought. And ultimately, I think there are definitely some claims here that, you know, maybe you guys in the comments can either clarify or challenge. And I think this is always a good conversation as far as the lore accuracy in these games, because I do see some people mention Bolt Gun and Rogue Trader, and they criticize those games for being less lore accurate than Space Marine. So maybe Space Marine 2 really is on another level as far as, you know, portraying lore accurate events and how they would happen. However, I'm also don't blame people for being a tad bit confused about, you know, the whole you're not on the front line and your strategic strike force and all that. However, I still want to just, you know, point out that I do think, you know, Combat Squad Talassa is supposed to be stronger than we think, ultimately, in the context of the story. But yeah, we would need to see some interesting things there. I mean, even one of them turns the thing, which is crazy. You know what I mean? Turning the thing is hard. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you have anything to challenge. Let me know in the comments if you have anything to add within the lore accuracy of Space Marine 2. And thanks for watching.